back to another video here on Free Will Photos. Today I'm going to be editing a photo of a bird that I took while I was out at a lake, and yeah, I haven't really thought through what I want to do with this image. I'm gonna go ahead and get started. So I think the first thing that I really want to do here is get rid of these things in the background. I feel like they're distracting. I'm probably going to crop in to do that. So I'm going to hit the letter C on the keyboard, and I'm just going to go straight away into cropping. I realize that I'm probably going to crop this way more than I ought to, and maybe give the bird a little bit of looking space. He seems too small in the frame, or she. I don't know what gender this bird is, so whatever, but the bird seems too small in the frame. So I'm just going to try and tighten up as best I can. Now, I am going crazy with the crop here, essentially trying to cut away as much of this background as I don't really care to see. And then maybe I'll lower this just a touch. So we'll go ahead and commit that to change. Now, this file is very, very small. I shot this with my Canon EOS R6. So before I move forward, I think I'm going to send this through Resize, just so I can bring it back up to scale. I don't know how small I made this, but I'm just gonna go ahead and resize, and we'll go through that. So this is just one of those things that I do in my workflow or my process. I could probably start working through some of the tone and color things here, but I don't really have a problem with the tone and color of the overall image. My real challenge came in with the framing, and I was using a 100 to 400 lens, and I was at 400 millimeters, and these are just tiny birds. I have no idea what type of bird this is, by the way, because I don't know my bird species, but it's a very, very small bird, so it is what it is. By cropping in, I was able to remove some of those distractions, and as this kind of thinks its way through, hopefully it comes through quick. So here we are inside of AI Resize, or Resize AI in ON1. Not a tool that I use often, so some of this is discovery learning for me, but I do have a general idea. So I'm going to click on Resize 2, and then I'm going to make the dimensions megapixels, because I understand megapixels. There's probably a better way of working with this. You can see this is at 3.2 or 3 megapixels. I'm not going to get into the points, but I want this to be 18 megapixels, and we'll see how that works. So I'm going to hit that and then hit tab, and now I have a file that is 18 megapixels, and I have a little bit of zoom here. I don't think that this is hurting the image all too much. Overall, is this the greatest photo of a bird? Absolutely not. It's just a photo of a bird, and I want to show you kind of the wiggle room that we have with using ON1 Photo Raw. So that's why I'm cropping in so heavily on a 20 megapixel file, and then just bringing it up just short of those 20 megapixels, because I don't think I really need all of those megapixels. Let me know what your thoughts are about megapixels in the comment section below. The next thing that I'll do is I will throw some sharpening on here, and I think that by me putting a little bit of sharpening, and I don't plan to print this, so this will be for screen. I'm going to use screen sharpening, and then I might even, let's see what noise reduction does. I'm not really seeing much of a difference, so I may have to run no noise AI on this afterwards. The noise reduction may also only apply after. Again, I don't use this too frequently, so if you have some ideas of what I could do to make this Resize AI work a little bit better, please let me know. But I think I'm good with what I got here. I'm just going to go ahead and hit done so I can get back to the overall stylizing of the edit. I'm going to rename this bird. Of course, I was updating Lightroom in the background, and it likes to steal the show. Bird resized image. Bam. I could probably name this something better. I don't need this to be a Photoshop document. Maybe I will make this I think I normally go TIFF for the sake of having the flexibility of camera profiles and stuff like that. I'm going to go with DNG on this one. Again, let me know if I'm doing something completely off the wall crazy. But for those of you who don't use Resize AI, similar to me, then let this just be an opportunity for you to, or a license or an invitation to go and explore how this particular software works. Because I think if you are an ON1 2023 user and you just don't use as much of what is available to you, then you miss out on some stuff. Here's the library. I'm gonna go find that file. I'm just gonna type it in down here to search for it. And I guess, did I not save it in this folder? Thought I did. So we're gonna come up here and we're gonna go to photo, and I guess there's no refresh. So let's go out of the folder and come back in. And I like to troubleshoot some things with you in real time. So I'm just gonna click on second SeaWorld trip or second New York trip, whatever. Doesn't really matter because I'm going right back into my Sakote 23 folder, and let's see if that file finally popped in. Now I'm going to click on edit, and hopefully it doesn't look as bad as the preview does. The final version of the image, hopefully that renders out pretty well. Otherwise, would have been very scary. Here we are. I feel like there's more definition. We have the file resized and we're ready to go to work. So the first thing that I'm going to do is just drop in some noise reduction. Even though this is a DNG, for some reason, it's not giving me the camera profile. So I don't know if that's an issue with ON1 or this particular photo, but something to be aware of. If you know anything about that, then leave it in the comment section below. Because again, I don't use the resizing tool as frequently as I do some of the other tools. But let's go ahead and zoom out, because I like to zoom out whenever I work with noise reduction. And I don't think I'm going to get too much of a reduction. I see that there's some more detail being brought in on the bird. If I pull down on this detail, hopefully that will smooth out some of this other stuff. But if not, then maybe we'll go with a blur. I think that works for what I'm trying to accomplish in this particular image. I'm okay with a little bit of grain in the image. Ultimately, I think that that's cool. Who knows, maybe we'll add some extra grain just for film style. This is pretty good to begin with. The next thing that I want to do is retouch some of these bigger items out of here. I'm going to try with the magic eraser first. So I'm just going to bring my brush size up and I'm going to paint over this whole area and see what happens here. And if this doesn't work out, then I may have to go with the clone stamp tool, but hopefully a few passes of the magic eraser. I like what it did there. So now I'm gonna go across this area here, and my dog is barking because kids just walked in the house, but that's just life. That's life. All right, we'll go across here like so, and we'll turn that away, hopefully. I don't know what turn away really means, but hopefully that makes sense. Okay, so now I have a cleaned up background and I'm ready to really get going with this photo, and I'm actually really happy with the outcome so far. So the first thing that I want to do is probably just increase the exposure just a touch. I like my photos to be a little bit brighter, especially knowing what I'm going to do in effects. Now, I don't always do this, but I do want to give some global edits before I start getting into some of the other edits. And I don't know how I feel about the saturation, so I might actually pull that down globally and then just increase the vibrance. And without getting into the technicality of vibrance versus saturation, saturation increases the intensity of colors throughout the entire image. Vibrance increases the intensity of colors at a more gradual rate, so to speak. That's the easiest way that I can explain that. I feel like it may be a little too orange, so let me bring down the temperature, maybe a little bit cooler. I don't really care for this crazy warmth. And I think that's all that I'm really going to focus on doing in this particular module. Now, let's jump over to effects and let's start stylizing this image. So one of the first things I want to do, there's a ton of green in this image. So I feel like that gives me a lot of opportunity to come in here and enhance or remove some of the crazy saturation in the greens. So that way we can focus more on the bird. So I'm just going to pull down on the saturation of the greens, but it looks like that may live more in the yellows. So we'll pull it down and you can see what's really happening here. And I like what it's doing. However, I want to mask this away from the bird. So I'm going to click on the mask. I'm going to click on the detail here or the drop down. And this is going to give me the animal, which it's going to select the bird. And then I am going to use paint out and hit apply. ON1's going to do its thing and kind of think it through. And then it's going to preserve my bird. Now, anytime I use the AI mask or really any mask, I like to throw a little bit of feather on there. So let's go ahead and turn on the mask, crank up on the feather here. And this is kind of starting to look the way that I'm hoping to see it work out. Now let's go ahead and start working on more of the tonal separation background. I'm going to copy this mask of the bird because I think that that's a good way of starting to work. And I'm going to come to Tone Enhancer. And you could do this in local adjustments. I'm just personally doing it in Tone Enhancer because that's where I feel like doing it. There are pros and cons. I'm not going to get into that in this particular video. And I'm just going to pull down on the exposure. I need to go invert so that way I get that on the background. Now this, in my opinion, looks crazy dark, and this probably needs to be feathered a little bit more, something like so. And who knows, maybe I need to fix that a little bit later, but we'll see what happens here. And the reason why I wanted to kind of underexpose the background, and let's see, I don't think contrast is going to do us any good in this particular edit, but my computer is thinking way too hard. Okay, it caught up with me. Contrast does kind of darken down that background, so I'll accept that. And then let's play with the compression. And all this does is it takes the tonal scale to make the photo appear like it did through my eyes, is what it says. Ultimately, I just play with sliders to see if it helps with the overall look, and it kind of does, so I'll accept it. You know, I'm just playing around, and this is what I encourage everyone to do with their own photos, because photo editing can be fun. So now that I have the background kind of darkened and I have the bird kind of where I want the bird, now it's time to make that bird really pop. So I'm going to go ahead and throw a dynamic contrast onto my bird, still using the exact same mask. This is one of the benefits of using ON1, I think. And I'm just going to invert that so that way it is applying to my bird only. And you can see how this dynamic contrast really just helps with putting a little bit more detail contrast in the back here. Makes that back side of the bird a little bit darker. We know that the light is coming from the right just because he's bright here and in shadow over here. So now it's time to really start to hone in that light, I think. And the way that I want to do this is with a sun flare. So I'll just go ahead and throw in a sun flare, and I'm going to reposition this because one, it's way too large, and two, I think that it should be somewhere more directional, like over here, something like that. And what I'm going to do is just pull down on the amount overall, and I'm probably going to paint this away from here because remember we resized the image and we're working with a larger image overall. Maybe if I turn off fit to canvas, nope, that doesn't seem to really do us any good. I'm just going to use a mask to soften this transition. This with a brush fairly large and my feather at 100%. I'm just going to brush across the edge here, and you can see it just kind of fades it away. I'm not trying to do anything crazy enhanced here. If I turn this off, and I will get rid of this thing over here because that's no good. If I turn this off and turn it back on, you can see it's just adding in that light, giving me some of that directional character. So now that I have the sun flare, and you know, I think that this is looking fairly decent, not gonna lie. It's not the best image, of course, but it looks decent. I'm gonna throw a vignette on here. Let's throw a big softy just for fun. And I think that this really does kind of hone in on the overall image. And I kind of like this. So I think I'll hold on to that. We will hit add one more time. And this time, I think I'm gonna throw a bleach bypass on here. And the reason I'm putting a bleach bypass on here is because I like to experiment. And I'm gonna put it underneath the vignette because I don't wanna increase that on the vignette. I'll probably pull down on the amount, and let's pull up on the saturation a little bit. And look at how this just, like, it makes that contrasty saturated look. Even though I desaturated everything earlier, I kind of had the idea that I was gonna come and throw this bleach bypass on top of the image. So that's kind of the reason why I wanted to desaturate, because I know I was going to re-add it later, or at least I had an idea that I would. I will say that this may be a little too strong, so let me just go ahead and pull that back just a hair, turn it off, turn it back on. I think that looks good. And then the last thing that we'll do, even though every time I say the last thing, it usually is not always the last thing because the way that I work, and yeah, let's try color grading, and let's just kind of cycle through some of these. These are going to be like really, really strong, but I'm looking for something like classic. Seems to work pretty well with this particular image. And then comfort also works pretty decent. I actually like what this is doing as well, Elton. And then, you know what? I really like keen, so I'm going to roll with keen. For some reason, whenever I hit return on my keyboard, it just doesn't like to work that. And then what I'm going to do is change the blend mode over to soft light and maybe overlay. Soft light seems to give a little bit more of that aesthetic. And then just pull down on the opacity. And you can see this is just a more intimate photo of the bird, I think, and kind of just really starts to draw in drama, so to speak. I think I like that. And then just for fun, I'm gonna try throwing a glow on top of here. And let's see what happens when I throw a glow. Oh wow, I really do like that. I may need to back it off a little bit. Maybe pull down on the opacity. I like what the glow does with just overall making it look nice and soft, and I really like that. The only thing that I think I really need to do now is hit the letter C, and I need to straighten out this little area. So come over to the edge. I'm gonna do it manually, and just see if I can make that whole item down here, the fence protector. I don't know what to really call it. That's what we're gonna call it though, a fence protector. Make sure that that looks pretty straight. And I really do like where this photo went from the beginning all the way to the end. Now, this is obviously what the photo looked like before or after I did all of the other adjustments. You know what? I am noticing something that I need to get rid of because it's gonna be a distractor to me, which is this little area down here. For me to get to that, I'm gonna turn off the vignette, pretty much everything that darkens up this area of the photo. I'm gonna zoom in to this area. Looks like that's about as close as I'm gonna get. Come over to the retouch. I'm gonna see how well the magic brush works on this. If it doesn't work that good, then what I will do is use the clone stamp or something else. But I just wanna get rid of this because I think that it's a little bit of a distraction and it should go away. So that actually did pretty decent. I'm gonna have to clean this up. Let me try one more pass over it just to see what I can do. And I may need to make my brush size a little bit smaller, which I'll do for this one. That is actually a trick to removing things from your photo. If you make your brush size just a little bit smaller, sometimes it gets a little bit easier to manipulate these removals. So I'm gonna make that a little bit smaller, and I could probably zoom in further, but for the sake of not hyper zooming, I'm just going to work at a pretty relative distance. And I don't think I'm gonna get this perfect. I'm just going to clean this up, but I could spend the time to really hone this in and make it that much better, as well as just adding in a clone stamp. But I think if I come back, let me just go ahead and close my retouch brush. If I come back over here, turn on the glow, turn on the vignette, I think that kind of works out. I probably need to get rid of that bottom piece because it does kind of stick out like a sore thumb. So let's come over here to the clone, and I'm going to sample an area relatively close to the area that I want to cover, and then I'm just going to paint over this. And I think that this can be pretty gentle. ON1 does a pretty good job at blending stuff in as well after the fact, as long as it's relatively close to the source, or at least in identicalness. That's probably not the way to say that, but oh well. If I do that, let's see what happens here. I think ON1's gonna blend that quite well. Yeah, I think that this would be okay. Feel like there's any issue, and if there is, then I'll show you another way of how I would correct it, which I think that this would be fine. I actually like this this bottom portion here, as the sunlight comes across here and each one of these little links is lit up. I think that's kind of cool. But if this was a bigger issue for me, what I could do is come into local adjustments, wait for that to load, hit the letter M, and then I can put a linear mask down here at the bottom. And now if I zoom this out, hit Command 0, so that way I get back to my original image. And I think that this is actually a really cool look of an image. There's some bird poop on the little railing here, but I don't want to spend too much time trying to clean up every single little thing in the image. This was really just more for fun. I called it a quick edit, turned into a little bit of a longer edit, but hopefully you found some value. If you did, smash the like button. Consider hitting that subscribe if you want to see more. If you want to pick up ON1 Photo Raw 2024, which is going to be a great release, guys. I really do believe that it will be. You can save some money at checkout using my affiliate code or coupon code, FreeWillPhotos20, and it'll save you some money. No extra cost to you, but I do get a small commission if you choose to support the channel in that way. If you got questions about ON1 Photo Raw, you know to leave them down in the comment section below, because I do get to all of my comments, most of my comments, but I do my best to answer as many of them as possible. Until next time, I want you guys to stay inspired and keep creating. Peace.